Discover the Our MedTech Lives podcast, where industry experts share their career stories, key achievements, and insights into overcoming challenges in the MedTech field. Hosted by Zilka Rima and Kash Ikram.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Our MedTech Lives. Today we have a veteran with over 20 years of commercial and leadership experience in the medical device industry, especially in launching new and innovative devices. So I'd like to introduce you to Mohan Nathan. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure.
Mo, let's get to know you a little bit. What I saw when I looked at your LinkedIn profile is that you hold a Bachelor of Arts degree. So we are super curious to learn how you started in MedTech.
Sure. Thank you for asking. So what really got me into when I was a much younger person was I was very fascinated with politics, government, law, and always thought I was going to go to law school. So that was sort of the thought process as an undergraduate. And then I sort of got bit with the entrepreneurial bug. This was in the East. It was a very exciting time in terms of the development of the internet and other things. And actually started working at a number of different startups on the kind of digital side of things and in kind of more consumer facing companies. It was pretty interesting. And then some B2B technology companies as well. So that was my experience. And I even started a company with some friends from college. So I quickly pivoted away from my thoughts of being a senator or running for office or law. And I just got very interested in business. The formation experience for me into MedTech was I went to Duke University for my master's of business administration. And I was very excited about that. I got there early, primarily because my girlfriend was living in Chapel Hill nearby, going to law school. So I was sitting in before the first year started, and there was a program in health sector management at Duke. And I was already paying quite a bit of money to be there. And so I said, well, let me do this. And it was a fascinating experience. It was run by a wonderful man named Dan Mendelsohn, who was the Office of Management and Budget Director for Healthcare under Bill Clinton.
Right.
Very connected. And the capstone experience of that course was we spent a week in Washington, D.C., meeting with the FDA commissioner, meeting with the Office of the Inspector General, meeting with public citizen and patient advocacy groups. And it really opened my eyes. And it was multidisciplinary because we had medical students, law students, and business students involved. And I just fell in love with it because there's an element of policy with healthcare. Ultimately, the patient has to come first. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in the commercial work. And it really just piqued my interest. And very quickly, I decided to continue in courses as part of my MBA at Duke. And they have a very, very good medical center there, obviously, one of the world leading medical centers. And so there was just a tremendous energy around pharma, biotechnology, and medical device. And Johnson & Johnson, for instance, was one of the top employers in their whole kind of early management track. Duke was one of the top sites, along with Wharton, that was attracting a lot of people into it. So I had the opportunity within a year to take a position at Johnson & Johnson MedTech in their diabetes division, LifeScan. And that was sort of my summer experience. I was lucky enough to, I guess, perform adequately enough where they asked me to come on full time after I completed my graduate work. And I did. And I've never really looked back after that.
I have one question to this. Normally, people are telling us, I started in a big company and then I moved to startup, but you just explained the other way around. So when you arrived in J&J, was it a shock or how was it to start there?
It was fantastic. I mean, Johnson & Johnson is a very mission-driven company. I still have behind me the credo that drives a lot of their behaviors. And, at the time I joined, I believe there were 206 operating companies. So one of the nice things about Johnson & Johnson, at least when I was there, I've been gone for some time, but you really felt that you were part of I wouldn't say startup, because frankly, the joint LifeScan was the market leader globally in self-monitoring of blood glucose. That was the primary franchise. So it was over $1 billion company, but we really had quite a bit of autonomy to sort of chart our own course and go that way. And to expound upon that a little bit, what was really fascinating about J&J was the amount of development and training they put into young people. And I really recommend that for folks that are looking to get in the industry. If you can join a market leader, um, and focus on just the job in front of you and performing, the opportunities for development are phenomenal in some of those companies. And J&J is one of the best. And so I have so much gratitude to those 4 years that I spent after my MBA at Johnson Johnson. I really felt that I was exposed to a lot. I mean, at one point I had the ability to launch a new product to the US. I was going to meet with the largest pharmacy retailers in the country. So I met with Walmart, I met with Walgreens,
Wow.
so it was interesting that there I am giving the presentation as a pretty young person,
Yeah.
launching it to a sales force of 263 people. But where else would I have those kind of opportunities so early in my career? It was
Yeah.
fascinating.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, if you just Google top 20 med device companies in the world, a list and the training and the onboarding that you get with those organizations is fantastic. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a
I,
great
I
way
think
to
it builds
start.
a foundation for anyone looking to get into this industry that it's very, very hard to match.
Exactly. And these are companies that really do apply business principles, business models. They teach you how to do that and apply it to the industry. But
Yeah.
then you did. I mean, then you went to Intuitive. Now, when we think of Intuitive now, we think of this, this gorilla of an organization that is just one of the top companies, if not currently the top med device company in the world. But back in 2007, everyone was looking at it and wondering, who are
Yeah.
these guys? Are they going to survive? Look at the price tag on this robot that nobody seems to want to use. We kind of sneered and laughed at them a little bit, man, but look where they are now. And you, to make a decision to go from J&J to Intuitive at that juncture, I find fascinating. So tell us a little bit about that.
I was living in the Bay Area with
Yes.
Johnson and Johnson, and it's a real nexus of innovation and growth in the world economy. So that I don't need to explain that to anybody. So you're always you kind of have a bit of a wandering eye, and you're looking at some of the success stories and the growth. And something that has always motivated me is, am I defending the status quo in what I do on a day-to-day basis? Or am I challenging that? And it's far more entertaining and interesting to be part of challenging the status quo. And Intuitive, even today, as a very large company, I give them so much credit. And the leadership is so disciplined. They
Yes.
continue to challenge the status quo, even now that you could argue that they're probably one of the top three most valuable franchises in all global med tech.
Yes.
I was probably, I should know this exact number, but I was employee 300 something. And now they have over 15,000 employees, 16,000 employees globally. So it was a much smaller company then.
Yeah.
I found so intriguing about Intuitive was just the discipline in how they approach their business. And I think they've maintained that discipline even as they've gotten to be a much larger company. It's been a real cultural imperative for them. And so that was just an incredible experience. In particular, what was so unique about my first role at J&J, I mean at Intuitive, was I was asked to be the senior marketing manager for urology. So this was their growth engine globally at that time. I mean, the CEO at the time is a very, very accomplished man named Lonnie Smith. He made the joke often that we aim for the heart and we hit the prostate, right? Even the best laid plans, you know, clinicians find value in other areas, and you want to
Exactly.
do it. And so I was the first person. I had an excellent boss that I'll speak about later, who had done so much of the early work to develop the procedure and the key opinion leaders and the process around prostatectomy being done
Yes.
with robotic assistance. And yeah, as you said, Cash, it was not by any means a foregone conclusion that the entire surgical world, not just urology, but general surgery, gynecology, thoracic, uh, would be moving in the direction of robotic assistance. There
Yeah.
was a real belief that what we offered at Intuitive was a better way at doing really complex reconstructive tasks.
Yes.
And that that's certainly come to be.
The strategy, the path they followed, yes, they started in the heart, right? They had made a robot for heart surgery. It didn't really take off, right? At the same time, in parallel, laparoscopic surgery was absolutely taking off at that point, right? In Europe, we were training 5,000 surgeons a year through our training facility just at Covidien at the time. Then, so that's taking off. But then you pivoted to the prostate, where laparoscopic surgery was not so strong, right?
Certainly not in the
And
U.S.
difficult. Yeah.
Certain, France, for instance, really had pioneered laparoscopic prostatectomy, and there were some centers that were doing a minimum invasive prostatectomy laparoscopically. I had the opportunity to train sales reps on the procedure and in urology, and I used to tell them, I said,
Yeah.
just show this video.
Okay.
And the video that I focused on was the urethrovesical anastomosis, where you've taken out the prostate, and now you've got to reconnect the urinary tract, and you've got to reconnect the bladder to the urethra. And that's
Yes.
a very tough thing to do. And typically what people were doing open was just like 4 interrupted sutures, right?
Right. Right.
And the way we reconstructed it, well, the way urologists reconstructed it using our tools was a very, very delicate, it's called the Van Velthoven stitch. They would literally take 12 bites and passes and build a beautiful reconstruction of the bladder to the urethra.
Yes.
And sometimes in med tech, there's so much complexity, and a lot of what I try to hone in on is simplify things.
Yes.
Major in the major things.
Yeah.
And to be able to show people that we can do this reconstruction in just a fundamentally better way. Let's take the cost and the training and everything, to put that aside for a minute and just
Yes.
join me on this journey to think, can we do this better? And can we prove it in terms of earlier return to continence, less blood loss, those sorts of things? That in and of itself, I think that was the spark, the key moment of dramatization that would get people to think differently about approaching this very important procedure in the most common cancer in men.
Exactly. And you're working in also deep in the pelvis in a very small area. And what laparoscopic didn't give you was this wristed instrumentation. With the robot, you could tie knots as if you were actually tying them with your own hands. You couldn't do that laparoscopically. And once you gained traction and success there, then the company expanded out into other laparoscopic procedures. So it's been a masterclass in how to do it, right?
Yes.
Please, Silke.
Mohan, if I read correctly, you started in marketing, right? And then you stepped into a commercial role. What motivated you for this step?
That's one of the things I might want to have back. One piece of advice I'd give to younger people, that if you're in the center of action, which was the headquarters of a rapidly expanding global company with a global role, think carefully about leaving that center for any reason.
Right.
Frankly, I think I made a choice on a personal level. My family's in North Carolina, and there were some other things going on. And there was an interest in sort of being closer. You all are very global operatives, but living in California versus the East Coast, you feel pretty far removed from people. And so thankfully, Intuitive gave me an opportunity. And I will say, this is a challenging thing to do in your career, and some people do it really well. And there's no perfect way to do it. But I do think you have to eat your own dog food. I think you have to be in front of customers in a sales role in order to help drive sales strategy. I mean, if you don't do that at some point, you're always missing the mark. And I've thought about why that is. And I think part of it is when you're in a marketing or market development role, you tend to work with your best customers, and you tend to have an echo chamber about what they think. You're not working with the marginal customer. And by marginal, I don't mean that in a pejorative sense. I mean that next customer,
Yes.
right? Who is in a different point in the adoption curve, has a different set of beliefs. And we'll talk about beliefs in a moment from a marketing model. But I think that's very valuable. So in retrospect, I certainly miss leaving the headquarters of Intuitive. I think, I probably should have stayed in that area, but I really did value and learn a lot by going into the field and
Yes.
taking on, frankly, a frontline sales role. which was,
And this applies also vice versa. For me, it was the other way around. I started as a sales rep, and then I was asked, "What do you think is your next step?" And I said, "Sales manager." And my manager at that time said, "No, I think you should go and have some marketing experience. And after that, you can decide whether you stay in marketing or you want to go back." So I think from whichever angle you're coming, it's always worth to have a look on the other side.
yeah, I prefer your approach, frankly.
But I went back.
Yeah, yeah. And I, after that, have kind of gone back and forth a little bit as well. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
But now you're on a commercial role, right? But
I
you are
know.
still in robotics. So what is so fascinating about robotics for you? Or is there anything, let me ask differently, is there anything on the horizon like AI and whatever is coming now that would also be attractive for you?
Yes and yes. So I think, you know, what's fascinating for me is what I do now with EDAP and our platform is called Focal One, is it's a wonderful marriage of robotic assistance. So it's a very, very roboticized platform where, you know, if you could argue it's a bit of a true robot, where rather than a master slave relationship where you're moving and then something else, there's a computer between you and instrumentation, and there's a lot of advantages to that. This is actually a robot from the perspective of you're doing planning and executing a treatment plan, and then the robot is executing that, always under your direction and control and ability to make changes. But essentially, it's executing a treatment plan. The robot is following your direction. The other thing that it really combines, and I think this is a broad area that's really exciting, is advanced imaging.
Right.
So
But
the
maybe you can tell us what Focal One does, what it's
certainly,
for. Yeah,
thank you. So Focal
yeah,
One is the leading platform in using therapeutic ultrasound, so high intensity frequency ultrasound that can both image and then treat by ablating tissue in a very, very precise manner, by millimeter by millimeter. And so the thesis here is a number of different technologies and techniques have converged in prostate, for instance, where now we can visualize that part of the prostate gland that has cancer, and certainly that part that does not. And for those patients that you have visualized that area of the prostate, you can treat just that area with a high degree of confidence and precision, and you can spare a lot of the areas that you don't want to mess with, right? This whole movement in medicine to less invasive, I think that's an important thing. And so if you can spare the organ and not have to reconstruct and take it out and affect a lot of other things that are very important, the results are that you can really do something very well oncologically for that patient and manage their cancer well. But you can avoid a lot of the functional outcomes that can come with surgery, not just, you know, the challenge of having surgery, or frankly, the other thing that we don't talk about but is really important is just radiation, right? Radiation is certainly an effective tool in medicine. We want it in the armamentarium, but
right.
I would argue it's used a lot to treat an entire gland or a broad area. And there's a lot of long-term side effects and toxicities associated with radiation. And if you can avoid that or delay that treatment by doing something more precise with something like sound to
Yeah,
ablate an area of prostate tissue, it's a very compelling option for patients.
fascinating, fascinating. I want to touch on the marketing aspect because, you know, in 20 years ago, we were sending out brochures and leaflets and mail shots, and now it's all digital, right? It's completely changed. And as marketeers, if you put your marketing hat on right now, you've had to evolve with this as well. And I seem to remember at the beginning, med device, with all the regulatory constraints that we operate under, there was a little bit of fear of, oh, is this going to get out of control? Do you remember those days? How was your experience with this evolution?
So I'd like to take your question and answer it. It kind of takes me in a different direction of thought. So what you're describing is some of the tools and the
Yes.
environment by which humans interact and communicate. Look, we're Switzerland,
Yeah.
Sweden, US for this
Yeah.
conversation. That's fascinating. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
But we're still conversing, and the fundamentals don't change. And so yes, I certainly feel that the ways in which we can communicate and reach people and whatnot have changed, and you have to change with those times. You
Right.
absolutely have to. But what I view as the fundamental challenge in marketing is too many people basically think that our job as marketers is there's one current belief and there's a desired belief.
Right.
And that's really important because what we focus on actually is the wrong thing. We focus on there's a current behavior and there's a desired behavior.
Yes.
And so we spend all our time and energy focusing on behavior. How do we change behavior? How do we change behavior towards our product or, in any field, medical or otherwise?
Right.
But we don't spend enough time thinking about what is the current belief that is driving that behavior. And until you change a current belief to a desired belief or a new belief, you're not going to change the behavior. Too many people skip that step or don't think of it that way. So a lot of the tools that we continue to use and evolve and are simply about identifying current beliefs and creating credible, factual, scientific, peer-reviewed, peer-influenced tools to go to a desired belief. And,
Yeah.
and that's a delicate process, and it takes skill. It takes a little bit of art. It takes humility.
Yes.
But there's so many tools now and ways to communicate to people, and they're just tools, frankly. And I would encourage people not to over analyze and become pure experts in a particular tool, because to your point earlier, Cash, if you were the world's best direct mail expert in 1999, did not evolve in terms of how you communicated with people, I think you would find your skill set pretty
Yeah.
useless.
Exactly.
But if you really focused on how do you, identify current beliefs and find pathways to change those beliefs in a
Yes.
credible way, then the tools will simply change, but the fundamentals don't change.
100%.
You have always been in the robotic space, and I think this is super competitive, right? So how do you balance the speed to market with patient safety and compliance in this area?
Well, we're in a very regulated industry globally, as we should be, involving patient health. But I've gotten a chance to work on pre-regulatorily approved products. So ultimately, what you're trying to do is prove safety and efficacy. And there's very well understood pathways to prove safety. And there's a lot of predicate technologies and devices and methodologies that you can build off of. Every technology is building off of something that came before. We owe a lot in the robotic space to the innovation in minimally invasive surgery that, Cash, you were very involved in at Covidien, US Surgical before that, and certainly Ethicon Endo were leaders in that space in creating a real belief and great results in minimally invasive surgery using non-robotic means. And so, you build on that, and every step of the way, what you have to do is what new things are you introducing? How do we go about really proving its safety, both from a benchtop, non-clinical perspective, but then also obviously very thoughtfully and carefully and safely introducing it into the human environment and demonstrating that safety and efficacy. And every procedure or tool has different key performance indicators that you're going to want to basically be able to prove out with data. And so it's a heavy lift, and it has to be done well, but it's not impossible, and you just have to get to work.
I mean, you said first in your marketing role, you changed beliefs, behaviors. Now you prove that it's safe. But then you have the third step. You have to build trust with hospitals and physicians and to get money for your and or reimbursement, maybe not at the beginning, but later on for your product. This is the next step. So how are you building trust to get it reimbursed?
Right. Well, I mean, it's a next step, but it's got to be part of your thinking process all throughout the journey. Ultimately, we live in a capitalist world, and I don't view that as a negative thing at all. And for young people that are looking to get into medical device in particular, I would argue never apologize for the fact that this is a business. It's okay.
Mhm.
Business is an exchange of value, right? It's not coercive. It's a belief that, look, this is what we're trying to bring to you. whether it be you as a hospital, you as a patient, you as a clinician. And ultimately, you have to make your own decision as to whether or not this is going to enhance your ability to provide care in a meaningful way. And so there will be some reimbursement associated with that. Now, there's two ways to look at it. There are certainly procedures and existing codes that exist that you could say, look, we're going to find ways to create efficiencies. We may add some cost, maybe initially, but over time, we may reduce cost or increase opportunity to grow and increase revenue and things like that by treating more patients or by treating them better. And so we can work with an existing reimbursement code and not need to ask for anything extra, right? Just, hey, look, there's a current reimbursement and we're going to work with that. That's frankly the robotic story, right?
Yes.
Intuitive did not go out there and say, hey, we've got this, robot that has a significant investment associated with it, both initially and ongoing. You need to pay us more to justify it. I'm sure that would be nice, but here's a $200 billion company essentially that didn't need to do that.
Yeah.
It worked with an existing reimbursement, said, hey, here's the argument. We're going to create efficiencies, whether it mean you're going to be able to expand the number of patients you treat. We're going to reduce the length of stay. We're going to allow you to deal with more complex reconstructive procedures, et cetera, et cetera. And that alone is going to justify some of these investments that you're going to need to make to access the technology. Other technologies, particularly if it's a new therapeutic area, like high-intensity focused ultrasound, which I do now at Focal One with the team I'm privileged to be part of, you do have to get a reimbursement code. And so how you go about doing that is you get about the work and you demonstrate value. You get into the peer-reviewed literature demonstrating value, and ultimately you have to make your case to payers and governments that this is a therapeutic area that needs to be accessible.
Yeah.
All reimbursement is, yes, it's money and somebody gets paid for doing something, but it's really about access. That's really the way we approach it, and how you should communicate about it is this something that people ought to be able to have access to?
Yeah. If you can prove that we're going to treat this, we're going to treat it better than the existing methodology to do it, right? If you then say, hey, but it's going to cost the same, or it's going to cost more, right? You're going to struggle, right? But if you can show that you are significantly better, right? So, hey, the patient's going home in 1 day instead of 2 days, doesn't need to spend a week in the ICU, right? TAVI valve was somewhere along those lines, right? So they went from open heart surgery to inserting a valve through your artery in your leg. Or you can show in the entire patient journey, there's a value, there's a cost saving maybe to society or the hospital or the healthcare system. Again, then you're in the right path. But if you have a product that does exactly the same thing at a higher cost, you may need to look at your strategy.
Yeah, it's far more challenged. Yeah.
The system is not designed for that.
Yeah.
It's very important to get
And
that.
as much as I'd like to say it's easy and it's a pleasant experience, it is a challenge, no
Yes.
question. I mean, there are so many technologies where the access to them are not yet where they need to be.
Mm-hmm.
I would argue high intensity focused ultrasound, which is a very promising area of medicine in multiple areas beyond prostate where we focus now, but also we have other efforts like in rectal endometriosis, which is,
Yes.
affects a lot of women with further stage endometriosis. It's going to delay us in being able to bring access to these treatments, because you're going to have a pathway and develop the evidence and do the work. And honestly, reimbursement tends to lag technology. It just does. And commercial reimbursement tends to lag, more government payer reimbursement, usually, not always, depending on the country. And so it is a bit of a regulator and a dampener of how quickly innovation can be spread.
Yes.
And it's just something you're going to have to make the case.
There are so many factors in our industry that drive rate of adoption, right? There are some technologies that are no-brainers, like everyone should be using it, but everyone's not, right? There's still a little bit of art and science that comes in, location, so many factors, like how much the clinical evidence is, how easy it is to use. what the training educational burden is.
No question.
In some places, can the infrastructure of the hospital take this device? And that's what makes our industry so fascinating, right? So on that topic, before we get into leadership, I want to understand, you work with SRS, you work with a lot of these societies, etc., and you get to see a lot of new tech coming. What's coming on the horizon that's really excites you?
Well, there's a couple of technologies. I mean, the first I have to mention, which is so hot in the public consciousness right now, is AI, right? And, that's a buzzword that can ultimately mean everything and nothing. But
Yes.
what ultimately it means in medicine is how do you bring the vast amount of data that we access into a moment of an individual clinical decision and benefit from that universe of data. So, an example I'll give, particular to prostate, is you can take pathological samples of hundreds of thousands of prostates and understand a lot more about where cancer is and isn't based on that, and build a model that's really data driven that can help you look at a particular individual's cancer with imaging, which has come a long way, but it's still never perfect. And you can use that to infer in real time information about margin and where things can be and not be that can influence your decision making. That's enormously important to reduce the variability and to give that particular patient the best chance of having the best outcome. Right. So this is going to be the way, none of us is as smart as all of us. Right.
Yeah.
We can get that information to uh, to be quickly accessed and understood by a clinician at the point of care.
Mm-hmm.
It can change the outcomes for people. So that is a very, very fascinating area, and there's a tremendous amount of investment in it. And we at Focal One, we're very proud to have pioneered integration with some of these AI tools to better understand what we're looking at in a particular prostate patient in terms of making interoperative decisions with our
Right.
platform. And I think this is going to be the way every intervention is going to go. The other areas that I'm really excited about, and one of the reasons that I'm at Focal One now, is this whole area of therapeutic ultrasound is fascinating. It's been in different modalities for some time. You could argue lithotripsy has been around for
Yeah.
a long time in terms of
Yes.
treating
Instead of
stones.
breaking up the
Sound.
stones in a kidney
Correct.
with
Using
sound
sound.
waves.
Yeah,
Yeah.
using sound. But the ability now to target a non-invasive, radioactive treatment energy all over the body in ways that create both a thermal effect or a mechanical effect is groundbreaking. And there's a lot of research and initiatives in there. There's a wonderful organization based out of Charlottesville, Virginia, called the Focused Ultrasound Foundation that is doing really tremendous work. And we're very excited to partner with them in bringing this therapeutic methodology to light. So I think how we start treating diseases all over the body, in the brain, in solid organs, in the prostate and other places, is going to change a lot over the next 5 to 10 years, even
Right.
using these kind of technologies. So those are two technologies that I'm seeing a lot of energy around. I think another technology initiative that people are very excited about is telesurgery and telecollaboration. Again, none of us is as smart as all of us, and the ability for a patient anywhere in the world to access the best care anywhere in the world, the best minds to affect their care pathway, whether it be in diagnostics, whether it be in choosing what modality they do, or in the intervention itself.
Yeah.
Somebody sitting in Orlando, Florida, and operating on you
I
in
go
Dubai
there.
or anywhere else is fascinating. And so I think that's going to really have a workforce improvement. We simply can't make enough surgeons
Yeah.
to treat all the people that need to be treated in the best way possible without the use of technology to enhance that. And it's an exciting area. And it's been something that people have thought about and visualized and hoped for a very long time. Intuitive Surgical began largely as a way to do remote surgery. That was sort of the genesis of the idea and some of the original
Yes.
funding. But I think now it's really come to fruition.
Yes. Now you've reminded me. Weren't they initially they got a grant from the US military design a robot that could
DARPA.
help with patients on the soldiers on the battlefield,
Yeah.
which they haven't delivered yet. We should remind them they haven't delivered that robot yet.
Well, they've done pretty well, and they've brought a lot
They've done really well.
millions and millions of people with better surgery. But yeah, no, but I would argue, I mean, Intuitive just at SRS this year in Strasbourg, France, did a telesurgery. But there's also a lot of other companies that are doing this that you're very well aware of and you're involved in.
Yes.
And I think this is one area where perhaps smaller upstart companies can seize market leadership by pushing this area forward, and which is a good thing.
And I think telesurgery, there's two areas where it really helps. One is where you have geographical regions which don't have access to standards of care, right? And the other one is where time is of the essence, right? Like stroke, right? So you have a stroke and you don't have 2 hours to get to the hospital, right? Or to get in front of the right clinician. You literally have minutes. And that's where not having to send you to the clinician or the clinician to you is going to be a game changer, right? And that is technologies that are absolutely coming.
Yeah, I think it will change the practice of medicine. I mean,
Yeah.
payers and societies and the way we train is all going to have to reflect this, and it's going to take some time, but it is going to change the whole way people are treated for disease.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to make a smooth transition to the next chapter, but Cash announced it already. We wanted to talk a little bit about leadership with you. What's your personal definition of leadership?
Oof. So I think fundamentally, a leader is someone that is there for the success of other people. Fundamentally, that's when you transition to being a leader, is if someone else's success and enabling that person's success, whether they be a fellow employee or a customer or anyone else, that's exhibiting leadership. And that's my fundamental definition of it, is that your focus is on someone else being successful. And you can be a leader as an individual contributor in an organization. And if you're just starting your career, I think if you have the mindset that how do I help other people be successful in what they're trying to do, you'll do very well. And you will eventually be in positions where you are now, your mom will think of you as successful and as a leader, and you've got a higher title. That stuff comes. But if you're focused on other people's success, that's really the definition of a leader to me.
Yeah.
Have you ever had a mentor in your career, or were you looking for someone who could be a potential mentor?
Yeah, some people do a very good job of this. It feels a little forced where they're like, "Oh, would you mentor me or this or that?" I
Yeah.
never really did that. But I look back on my career and there were a few people that I had the chance to interact with that made me a lot better or challenged me to be better. Whether I met the challenge or not is sometimes questionable. But there were a few people that really stood out to me. One person I feel like I have to mention is at J&J. I had the honor of working for a man named Peter Luther. And Peter had a great success in the medical industry, but he came from Tylenol. He came from McNeil, another J&J operating company, and he brought a level of market discipline and customer thought and communication, and he demonstrated that. He was very hands-on, and he demonstrated that, and it was impossible not to pick up ways of approaching problems and opportunities and data that was built off of that discipline. That was phenomenal. And another mentor that would probably laugh at being called a mentor was a man named Jerry McNamara, who had a tremendous career first, in the world of U.S. surgical and laparoscopic instrumentation, and then came to Intuitive, and he was our leader for sales and marketing. And one of the reasons I regret leaving that home office of Intuitive was I wasn't sitting next to him anymore and just seeing how he approached problems and how he thought about things and how he communicated. Right. And really cut through the fluff and focused on what was real. And then I would argue the last mentor, and I'm very pleased to work with him still, is a gentleman named Ryan Rhodes. Ryan was my leader at Intuitive.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found remarkable about Ryan, and what he's the CEO of EDAP Focal One, was really two things that really were superlatives for him. One, a tremendous focus on clinical knowledge and excellence. Ryan made it his business to understand the clinical application and the data and the technique associated with our particular product as well as anyone. So really mastering that and being an expert in it as much as you can be, as he's not a physician, but really made that his life's mission. And then the other thing that I think made him really extraordinary was how generous he was in wanting other people to be successful. Like from the moment I joined Intuitive, here was a person that frankly should have said, like, shut up, sit back, just observe. I've done this for a while. I've kind of got a good thing going in urology. We're changing the market, and don't try to do anything different or new, or just watch and do what I tell you. He didn't approach that at all. He really wanted, if you were part of his team, he wanted you to bring everything you could to it. And he would forgive mistakes of commission. If you tried something and maybe it didn't land quite the right way, if you approached it the right way and were trying to do something important. And that's a generosity and frankly, a maturity to not be threatened by other people's success, that it's fundamental that you look for in anybody that you work with, if they have that capability. I've always thought about that, and I really value it.
Yeah, I think I've had the pleasure. I think you're being very humble, because I've had the pleasure of knowing you for a long time and seeing you. You landed as a transenteric, and you were leading, at least from the external commercial sense. And you're seen in our business, in our industry, as a leader. So I think you're being a little bit, you're being humble, and
Well, I
it's
get humbled on
understandable.
a daily basis, so
Yeah,
it keeps me in
I
check.
mean, who you
Thank you
are.
for
I
saying
mean,
that. Thank you for saying that.
and I think you have some great leadership traits, which is why we really wanted to have you on this podcast and talk about leadership, right? Because
If I could expound upon that, I think one thing that is really important in our industry and in life in general that's
yeah,
very hard to maintain is
yeah,
candor.
yeah,
And as we go higher in our careers or whatever, or when you're just starting out, I think people tend to self-regulate what they say. And you shouldn't just be popping off all over the place, but
yes,
they're always worried about, should I say this, or how will it be perceived, or will I be, I think people overthink that. I think if you focus on being as candid as possible, if you know something, you know it. If you don't know something, you don't know it. If you feel passionately about something, express it in an effective way, in a non-offensive way. I mean, you don't need to be a jerk about it by any means.
absolutely,
It's really important to be candid to whoever you're speaking with, to a physician, to a hospital executive, to a leader in your organization, to people that may at some point be working with you or for you, right? I mean, but really they're working with you.
yeah,
Just, people have a very, very well attuned sense of inauthenticity. And just try to avoid that in how you communicate to people, whoever they are. Will take you a long way as a leader and as a person.
Well, now that you are really on top of the pyramid, how do you spot potential leaders in your team to help them grow in the career?
Well, I wouldn't quite say top, but to your question. So I think I would like to sort of simplify hiring into just like 4 categories, frankly. It can be very simple, right? I think the first thing is integrity, right? And so you got to approach, I mean, especially if you're in the medical industry and you're dealing with regulated markets and things like that, there are behaviors in terms of how you communicate, how you behave, how you act, how you treat other people, that if you don't operate with integrity, and nobody thinks they're a bad person, but you can see people that sort of blur the lines and don't operate the best way. Well, there's really no place for that. And ultimately, you may win 1 or 2 small battles, you'll lose the war in your career for sure. And it's a small industry, and people will know that about you. So integrity is really important. The next thing I really look for in somebody new or young or starting or whatever is energy, right? You have to have a motor, that you make that extra call, you think a little bit more deeply about something, you try to figure that out. Kind of closely tied to that energy is enthusiasm, right? And look, people have more to do and more to think about in whatever role you're approaching them in than they have time for. And if you're not enthusiastic, right? And it can't be a false enthusiasm. And I don't want you just to be like a bravado. But if you're genuinely curious and enthusiastic about what you're trying to do in whatever role you're playing, that's contagious. Enthusiasm is really contagious. And so, if I can identify someone with high integrity and who has a great deal of energy and is enthusiastic, I've got a lot of time for that person. I think the other two things are intelligence and experience. Intelligence can take several forms, right? I mean, it's not just did you go to Harvard or,
Yeah.
were you a mechanical engineer and you
Yeah.
I mean, that's good. That's good. I mean, I would encourage my kids to do the best they can,
Yeah.
develop those credentials, right?
Yeah.
But intelligence is, it's EQ, it's IQ, it's how you approach things thoughtfully.
Yes.
You really, and if you have curiosity, right?
Yeah.
You can be a very enthusiastic beginner, but if you've got real curiosity, those people tend to have a development cycle that's really compressed. I've got a young woman who I have the pleasure of working with in New York, who only had about 2 years of med device experience, kind of more in an associate role. And we took a chance on her. And what I love about her name's Alex. What I love about her is that within a year, not even a year, less than a year, I would observe her working with some clinicians at some of the best hospitals in the world. In this case, this was Memorial Sloan Kettering.
Yeah.
And I saw how capable she was in managing the relationships in a very professional way, adding value, having been very curious the whole way. She's certainly intelligent. She's got a great intelligence background, but she really developed very, very quickly. And she's a very high performer. And this is a very young person. And so that's really a special thing. And then lastly, experience. But experience is a lagging indicator. And ultimately, I would encourage young people that are trying to get in this industry to not get so hung up on that. Wherever you get started, perform there and you'll have opportunities. They'll come. They really will come.
Yeah, as our industry is evolving so fast, and I've never seen so many new innovations coming into our business as I am now, and it's only going to explode. What do you think are going to be the CEOs and the leaders in our business in the future? What are going to be the skill sets they're going to need, which may be slightly different or more focused than they were in the past?
Yeah, yeah. I think there's going to be more and more of a value in deep technical expertise, which probably doesn't do me a lot of favors because I've been a generalist. But I do think that folks, as these technologies get more and more complex, having that credibility in terms of a deep domain expertise, and the challenge there is a lot of people that are specialists don't develop some of the skills that can make them effective organizational leaders. So it's a rare person who has both. I would argue you look at someone like Gary Guthart at Intuitive Surgical, who's just stepped down as CEO and handed the reins to a very capable person in Dave Rosa. But Gary was, from an engineering perspective, I mean, Stanford, SRI, I mean, he was there from the beginning. So you'd look at him and say, wow, this guy's a technical guru and an expert, but he had that capacity to be one of the most successful medtech CEOs of the last, I mean, ever. But he developed that, and he maybe it was there innate. He certainly has tremendous capabilities as a human being. But I'm sure if you talk to him, which would probably be a more viewed podcast than me, he would indicate that it was a growth experience, and he had to grow new skills in dealing with
Right.
people. I will say this about CEOs: at the end of the day, your primary job is first and foremost to set a vision and to
Yes.
keep the organization focused on that vision. And you have to do a lot of external communicating.
Yes.
You also have to be a very good communicator, hopefully. You have to be a very good listener. That's the important part of communicating that most of us forget. And I have to remind myself of at times.
Yes.
You have to have a very good sense of people and bringing the right people into your organization. You have to be able to set a culture, which means there's things we do and don't do. There's a way we approach things and there's a way we don't approach things, even if on a particular moment,
Yes.
it makes sense to maybe do something a little different than we normally do. But if it goes against our culture, we don't do that. Right.
Yeah. I agree.
So those soft skills become more and more important no matter where you go in life, but particularly if you get to be a leader of an organization. You could be the most technically proficient expert in the world, but if you don't have those skills, you're going to fail.
Yeah,
Because remember the definition of leadership, it's helping other people be successful. And
exactly.
no CEO can do it themselves. They just can't.
Being able to define, create culture is so important, because what we've seen is the right culture is difficult to do. And those companies who have the right culture, they do really well.
Yeah.
But if you have the wrong culture or the wrong habits have set in, it's really tough to change, right? It can be like turning a oil tanker. It takes time. It takes a lot of effort.
Yeah.
Well, I think this last hour has been flying. So we come to our, sorry for this, but we have to come to our famous last question, which is, what are the three things you know now that you wish you would have known then? Or in other words, what are the recommendations you have for the younger?
So I think the first thing I wish I could go back and tell my 23, no, let's say 25-year-old self when I started in this MedTech journey, I think the first thing would be patience. I think I wasted a lot of mental energy worrying about where I was or wasn't
Right.
at any given moment. I don't want to think I was the worst at it, but there's a lot of that anxiety associated with, I'm not getting this assignment, or I'm not, this person has gotten moved faster than me into this role. So there's a lot of mental dissatisfaction that people create in their careers. And frankly, the more quote unquote capable you are, the more you suffer from this disease.
Yeah.
And I would really encourage people to just take a breath and focus on the now in their career, and just do the very best they can do and keep learning at that moment. And I wish I could go back and sort of just calm that young person that had all these anxieties and thoughts and was just kind of all over the place, and just, it's part of growing up. But I think just be patient and seize the opportunity in front of you right now. And I continuously try to remind myself of that in my life today. So I think patience would be one of those things. I think the other thing I would really focus on is try to really understand the clinician. Obviously in my business, and I think the overall rule is just really understanding the customer, and really learning how to talk to customers and understand their experience. And I think I've done that to a certain extent. It's taken me a while to get better and better at it, but just spending time and observing and listening and learning from your customers, they're going to show you where you can add value.
Mm.
They're going to show, it's going to become apparent. You're going to start picking up on certain things. And whether you're really early in your career or at a bigger role, whatever it is, you're going to have an opportunity to create value for that person by really spending time. And so ask yourself, wherever you are in your career, how close am I to the customer experience? And this is a real challenge as you get quote unquote higher in your career, is you get more and more removed from that. You're not quote front line, and you have to fight against that. You have to have that customer intimacy where you really know what people think, what their current beliefs really are, how your product is really landing with them. I'm sure there are things you want them to do, but what are they really doing and what are they really thinking? And you have to start with that. So that listening, that customer intimacy is just so important. I'd want to do that better and more than I've done in my career. And then the last thing would be, figure out a few key areas where you invest some time to be truly world class. There's a lot of things that, if you start in this industry, it's like drinking from a fire hose, right? And we kind of encourage that. Some of the best companies have these training experiences that are boot camp, multiple weeks. And they kind of tear you down a little bit.
Yes.
You come out of there, and it's funny. I think a lot of people walk out of that training. They may not say it, but they're just like, "Wow, I don't even know if I belong here. This is a lot," and you can get overwhelmed. But if you can truly focus on one, two, three, four aspects of the job and say, you know what, this is where I'm going to try to be really excellent, because too much of our lives is spent trying to correct our mistakes or get better at the things we're not good at. But all of us are going to find a few opportunities where we can be great at something. And you should really major in those things and keep developing yourself in those things. So for instance, if you feel like, hey, I'm really good, I get a lot of energy. And frankly, the way to tell where you're good is not anyone's going to tell you you're good. It's where you want to be spending your time. If you find that that's the most interesting thing, then dive into it and get really good at a couple of those things. For instance, if you're just absolutely excellent at running a training lab and you really like doing that. Now, look, maybe you don't want to spend your whole career being part of a training lab, but you can be the best at this. And frankly, people that develop real capability and expertise in doing something well are then given the opportunity to teach it, to lead it, to help others do it. They're then oftentimes given the opportunity to say, well, there's something that's somewhat analogous to this, but you did that so well. We'd like to expand your role to allow you to do this too. And that's how you grow. So it's a long-winded answer, but essentially I think be patient.
Yeah.
Really get close to the customer, make that a mission critical aspect of how you approach your business life, and find a couple things that you really tell yourself, you commit to yourself, that I'm going to go out and try to be the very, very best I can possibly be at this specific aspect of the job.
Fantastic. Mo,
Great advice.
great advice. I agree. Thank you so much from both of us. You are a humble guy, right? But I must say, you're a great role model. Thank you for sharing these experiences in such a candid and vulnerable way. I think we can all learn a lot. Your ability to lead in this highly competitive market over the years makes you a great mentor, a great teacher. So all I can say is keep holding up the light for the rest of us to follow, and I will continue to follow. So appreciate your time today.
I'd say the same of both of you. So thank you so much for this opportunity. Appreciate the work.
Thank you, Mohan.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into our MedTech Lives. You have been listening to Zilka Rima and Tash Ikran. We're committed to bringing you insights and stories that inspire and inform the medical community. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your network.